Movement directly in front of him startled him so that he tumbled backward. The fawn lifted its face to his. It turned its head with a wide, wondering motion and shook him through with the stare of its liquid eyes. It was quivering. It made no effort to rise or run. Jody could not trust himself to move. We know that Jody was searching for the hoof prints, right? But he could not trace it because the previous night's rain had washed away everything except the big cat's and buzzard's footprints. A fawn's hoof prints were not seen. But all of a sudden, he heard a noise and suddenly he tumbled backward. Tumbled means he fell backwards. It was then he saw it was the fawn which he was searching for. He could not believe his eyes. The fawn lifted to his face. The fawn was also wondering who the man is. It turned its head with a wide, wondering motion and shook him through with the stare of its liquid eyes. We know the eyes of fawn are very beautiful, isn't it? It stared at Jody. It was quivering. Quivering means it was trembling. It was trembling because it's too small, right? It made no effort to rise or run. It just stood there itself. It didn't move at all. And Jody could not believe himself. He whispered, "It's me." The fawn lifted its nose, scenting him. He reached out one hand and laid it on the soft neck. The touch made him delirious. He moved forward on all fours until he was close beside it. He put his arms around its body. A light convulsion passed over it, but it did not stir. Now, the fawn also, you know how animals do, like dog. It scented him, it smelled him. The fawn lifted its nose and smelled him. He reached out one hand and laid it on the soft neck. Now, Jody embraced this little fawn. The touch made him delirious. Delirious means he was very much excited because he has been searching for the fawn for a long time. He was always in thoughts of this fawn, isn't it? So he felt so excited when he saw the fawn and when he touched it. He moved forward on all fours until he was close beside it and he put his arms around the fawn's body. A light convulsion passed over it. Convulsion means a light shiver passed over it, but it did not stir because it's too small and it is scared. It doesn't know who the person is, isn't it? So it just shivered. A small shiver passed over it. He stroked its sides as gently as though the fawn were a china deer and he might break it. He stroked or he patted the fawn very softly as if he is handling a china deer. China deer is a clay deer that can be broken if not handled properly. So he was handling the fawn just like a china deer, as if he might break it. Its skin was very soft. It was sleek and clean and had a sweet scent of grass. Sleek means very smooth and shiny. We know how the skin is, isn't it? It was very smooth and shiny and had a sweet scent of grass. He rose slowly and lifted the fawn from the ground. Its legs hung limply. They were surprisingly long and he had to hoist the fawn as high as possible under his arm. Now slowly he rose and lifted the fawn from the ground. Its legs hung limply. Hung limply means its legs were lying very softly in a way that it's very soft. They were surprisingly long and he had to hoist the fawn as high as possible under his arm. Though the fawn is very small, his legs were very long. So he had to carry high. A hoist means he had to pull up higher because its legs were very long. He was afraid that it might kick and bleat at sight and smell of its mother. He skirted the clearing and pushed his way into the thicket. It was difficult to fight through with this burden. He was afraid that it might kick or cry at the sight of his mother or smell of its mother. He skirted the clearing and pushed his way into the thicket. He went along the clearing or he went around the clearing and He made his way into the thicket. It was difficult to fight through with his burden. The fawn's legs caught in bushes and he could not lift his arm with freedom. We know that the scrub was very thick, so it was difficult for them to move, and the fawn's legs caught in the bushes and he could not lift of his own. He tried to shield its face from prickling vines. Its head bobbed with his stride. His heart thumped with the marvel of its acceptance of him. Jody tried to protect the fawn from prickling vines, and its head bobbed with a stride. Bob means its head was moving up and down as they were walking. His heart thumped with the marvel of its acceptance of him. He was in great wonder when he felt the fawn has accepted him, and it did not bleat or kick him at his sight. He reached the trail and walked as fast as he could until he came to the intersection with the road home. He stopped to rest and set the fawn down on its dangling legs. It wavered on them. It looked at him and bleated. Finally, they reached on an intersection with the road home. So he just dropped, or he stopped to rest and set the fawn down on its dangling legs. Dangling means hanging legs. It wavered on them. It wavered means it shivered on them. It looked at him and bleated. He said, enchanted, "I'll carry you after I get my breath." He remembered his father saying that a fawn would follow if it had first been carried. He started away slowly. The fawn started after him. He came back to it and stroked it and walked away again. When he kept the fawn down, the fawn started to bleat. So he just consoled the fawn by saying that, "I'll carry you after I get my breath." He said, enchanted. Enchanted means with great delight. Happily, he said, in a very pleasing way, he said, "I'll carry you after I get my breath." He also remembered that his father saying that a fawn would follow whoever the person the fawn sees for the first time, or if it had first been carried. So he started away slowly. The fawn stared after him. He came back to it and stroked it and walked away again. It took a few wobbling steps towards him and cried piteously. It tried to walk, but in an unsteady manner. Wobbling means unsteadily. And it started to cry piteously. It was willing to follow him. It belonged to him. It was his own. He was light-headed with his joy. So he understood that the fawn has accepted him in all means. It was willing to follow him, and it belonged to him. Now this fawn is Jody's own. And Jody felt so happy. He wanted to fondle it. Fondle it means he wanted to pat it. He was light-headed with this joy. Light-headed means he couldn't, he was so much excited and in great joy that he couldn't think anything else. All what he had in his mind was only about this little fawn. He wanted to fondle it, to run and romp with it, to call it to come to him. He dared not alarm it. He picked it up and carried it in front of him over his two arms. It seemed to him that he walked without effort. Now he was in great excitement and joy that he wanted to fondle it. Fondle it means he wanted to pat it or stroke it. He also wanted to run and play with the fawn. Romp means play. He felt as if he has got a new companion or a friend. He dared not alarm it. He picked it up and carried it in front of him over his two arms. It seemed to him that he walked without effort, and he was not at all feeling as if he is carrying the fawn. Because of the great love for the fawn, he didn't feel its weight while he was carrying it and walking.